Hi, this is Sharon, Rough Road RV Life. We like looking at freedom, and we get asked all the time, how do you plan your trips? How did you get this spot? How far in advance do you plan? Today, I'm going to answer those questions. Come on inside. So how do we find our campgrounds? How do we get the site? Well, I'm going to show you here. The tool that we use is RV Trip Wizard. So I'm going to be showing my screen, so follow along. So this is the opening screen when you come to RV Live Trip Wizard, and it's more than just a GPS app. It's also it's a #1 trip planning tool. It's a mobile RV GPS. It's a maintenance tracker, RV lifestyle, education. So there's so much more here, but we use it for the trip planning primarily. So okay, know that there is a 7-day free trial period here, so you can kind of play with it before you decide to buy. If you do decide to buy, I believe the price now is $59, but using the code ROUGHROAD, RUFFROAD, you can get 25% off right now. So you can do that using the link below, or you can also use that in your browser. It doesn't work in the app, so you have to go through your browser on your computer or your browser on your phone, not the app or the link, either or. Okay, so starting here, we're going to go to member login, and I'll just share with you what we have going on. Now, I don't know which trip we have up here right now. I've actually been playing with 2024. We are currently in 2023, but we finished 2022. Okay, so this is showing what's going to come up first is a trip that we're in the middle of right now. But I'm going to come back up here to open the trip, open a trip, and go to our archive trips. And it's our 2022 Southwest trip. Hi. I don't know why the hi is there. I think, somebody might have been typing while it was open. I don't know. So one thing, you will need internet to run this program or the data on your phone. We're in a place right now where data isn't stellar, so it might be a little lagging. I'll try to keep it going for you. All right, so here you see our 2022 trip, and any of you who followed us, you know we went all the way up to Colorado, and we dipped into Utah. Whoops, it's showing all these warnings. And even over here to California, we went through Arizona. So we kind of we were in Arizona for a while, back through Texas and back all the way to Florida. So I'm just going to give you a little tour of the screen first, and then we'll get into some specifics. So this is a trip, and I planned it. I'll talk about how to plan a trip in just a moment. But right here is where your trip is. You can open any trip. You can have a tentative trip. You can have an archive trip, or you can have an active trip. And this is where you go to create a trip. And this little tool here, if you click on it, is where you set your trip settings. So if you go to trip settings, you name your trip. You can put any notes, which I did. I had 2 or 3 things planned. You can change your status from archive, tentative, or active. And you can have an email sent if you want. You can enter your RV information. You can manually input it right here, or you can go to look up your RV, and you can, based on what it is, they have the specs in here for you. Just know that that might not include your air conditioner, so it's always a good practice to do your own measurements yourself. Just to show you your fuel type, fuel capacity, fuel reserve, because it will tell you, if you decide to set it up that way, when it's time to buy gas. But we don't use that part. Routing and driving. Okay, here you can select standard routing. That's not going to take into consideration your RV info. That's going to be like Google. You might end up on a dirt road or a mountain road. But if you do the RV routing, that's going to take into consideration your RV specs. You can choose to avoid tolls, avoid highways, avoid ferries, avoid tunnels, avoid unpaved roads, and you can use your routing engine estimate or your average speed. I think this year I'm going to experiment with using routing engine estimate. I've always used just 45 miles per hour, but it does show a lot slower than it actually takes. But I like that because for planning, I'd rather have it showing that it'll take longer than it takes longer and it's less amount of time, if that makes sense. You can choose your driving radius here, and I'll explain that as we start looking at the map. But what that is, if you want, you don't have to have a radius, but if you are looking for campsites, say within 50 miles, 75, or 100 miles, whatever you set it up, it'll show you those radiuses. But it's very helpful when you're laying out your trip. And your driving distance for the radiuses here, which you don't have to use, you can choose hours per day. I only want to travel 3 hours a day. Okay, so you click there and that'll show your radius. Or you can do a minimum. This is minimum, middle, and maximum. We do 50 miles minimum. We like to get 50 miles down the road. 100 miles is a middle, or 150. We don't like to go over 150, although we have. And also we take into consideration the road. Is it going to be a windy road? Is it going to be a mountainous road? That's going to affect where we decide to set our campground stays up. Then when you finish, save. And then the next thing is expenses. You can put your averages here for all these things. But we do the actual campground, and then we track our fuel separately. So we don't use this, but know that it's there. All right, so that's all the trip settings. Let me click off of that. And so here you see where we started, when you started. You can set your start date. As soon as I book, I come over here and lock it in. It's just simply go into this little icon to lock it in. So you see all these locked in. That means that my dates won't change. They will stay the same. This just going down, you can see. These are the actual costs I put in here. How many nights we stayed at each place. And here's the mileage between stops. So like I said, we don't like to go over 150. And as you notice, these are, right within our range. And that one's 142. So that's how the trip part of it works. Let me get that out of the way. You can see your entire trip here, or you can zoom in using the zoom button. So we're just going to do a round the clock look. Here you can search for a specific park, and you just type that in, and usually it will come up. Or if you just need to set, well, I know I need to be around Knoxville, Tennessee, so I'm just going to put in Knoxville, Tennessee. Filters. Filters are right here. You can turn them off, or you can turn them on. And it'll show, if I zoomed in, it would show you all these things. So here are the filters that we have. You can choose your parks, your park types, commercial, private, state parks, and you can view more. Army Corps parks, we usually have that one checked. U.S. Forest Service. Park rating, you could actually filter by park rating. Maybe you don't want to fool with looking at 3-star parks, so come on over here and do 4 or 5. Park features. Oops, I missed park reviews. Park reviews right here. I do read the reviews. I start and look at the big picture, and then I kind of scroll in. Just know that the more of these you use, the more limited results you're going to get. And some places are pretty sparse, believe it or not. So you might want to go gingerly through these things. Hookup and connectivity, amenities, park pricing, recreation, brands, clubs, and memberships. You can come down here if you're a member of any group, and it'll give a special icon for you. Here's the filters we have right now for this one, the last time we used. You can also filter for points of interest, fuel, rest areas, dump stations, overnight parking. Okay, I'm zoomed out. I'll show you this a little closer when we get to planning a trip anyway. And then here's maybe, we've had to find a bicycle store along the way. Of course, we just use Google usually, but it's right there if you need it. Hazards, you can choose the hazards tab. We always keep the low clearance on here. because, you know, we don't want to be sent down the road that is, we're not going to be able to fit under a bridge or something like that. Okay, get that out of the way. Map settings. So here on map settings, you can choose your map style. Street map, night map, terrain map, satellite map. It's a tongue twister. Or you can look at your driving radius. That's what the advanced radius looks like. It's too busy for me, but you might find it useful. What it does is it kind of follows the roads. So we're here, if you go, let's see, if you're traveling in a straight line, but sometimes it's like this. So that's going to help. I think that's how that works. Like I say, I don't use that one. Show campgrounds, you can turn that on or off. And I'll show you an easier way so you don't have to do that. Show points of interest. Turn those off right now. Enable filters on. Show low clearances. Turn that on. Public land layers. It'll show you the different public lands, national parks, monument sites. Okay. And the beta map. You can even look at weather layers, and that might be helpful for a move day to turn those on and check out the weather. And then low clearances. Let's see. Oh no, here we go. And time zones. I didn't know this was here, and we could have really used this when we were changing time zones last year. So that's the map layers. Here you can turn on campgrounds and turn them off. And if you're zoomed in, you will see them. So let's just zoom in a little bit. Let's pick one to zoom in on. Let's zoom in on. Internet's super duper slow. Let's go to Trailer Village. So what I'm trying to get to here is Trailer Village. But remember, my thing about it is slow internet right here. Okay, here we are. Trailer Village. In the Grand Canyon. I also, you can type whatever name you want to here. I always put our site number. I usually will put, you know, if it's a pull through or sewer, I'll indicate that, or the balance due, so I can see it at a glance. But if you come over here and click on it, it'll take you right to it. So here we are, Trailer Village. I can see that campers have rated it 8.1 out of 10 stars out of 450 reviews. We are staying at site 29 here. And this is the Grand Canyon. These little symbols, this is electric, water, sewer. Big rigs are okay. And this one is restrooms. There is no Wi-Fi available, and pets are allowed. The symbols here, $3 signs, $41 to $70. I actually think it's more than that. I think it's 80, upper 70s, maybe 80 now. So that might be a little out of date. But I think there was just a recent price increase in the past year. But, you know, 5 to 20, 21 to 40. Just know that prices are changing all the time. So take this with a grain of salt. This is, that shows if I wanted to click here, that's my radiuses. This tab here tells park details. So whenever you click on any part that you bring up, it will bring this up. And you can see contact information. You can click to go to the website. You can look at a satellite map. You can see some of the things that we just saw. 80 total sites. What is the elevation? 7,000 feet. Tells me we'll have to deflate our sleep number bed a little bit. And nearby gas prices you can check. And affiliations. There's usually an icon right here. There's photos here. And let me give you a little tip. Pay attention to these photos. Because if you only see one site or a picture of one camper, you might want to be wary of that campground. We learned that the hard way, but that's another story. But you can flip through here and look at the different, that's what the campground looks like. Super helpful. You will have elk in your campground there. We did a campground review of Trailer Village RV Park. It is a a vendor, so you don't get the America the Beautiful pass discount there. You pay the full price. So anyway, there's pictures. Then you click on the features tab at the individual campground, and it'll show you, what they offer. This connectivity here will tell you if there's service, but it doesn't tell you how good the service is. So I'll show you how to check a little further on how well your service provider might work. Whoops, let me go back to features for a minute. And there's, just a lot of information about what they offer there. Reviews. This person said they only gave 2 stars. Price is $80 now, and this is where I go to look for prices too, because reviewers will put them in here, and usually they're pretty spot on. This one was only $60. Not sure why. $68. So they do have two different site types that you can choose. One's more rustic, and when we reserved, it cost less, and we also reserved, because we had to change sites, one of the nicer sites. So, and it was more. But park is clean, spaces were small, lots of long-term residents. Employees do live there, so maybe that's what they're talking about. Area is typical desert, junk everywhere outside. But read these. Trailer Village, here is one. 4 stars. A real RV campground in the middle of a national park with sewer hookups. And when you're reading these reviews, it's from that person's perspective, so I always read reviews. But here's what I want you to know. If you want, click on Read More Reviews, and this is how you can find out, how does the phone service really work there? Well, here, if you come here and hover after you hit the More Reviews, you can see people have done speed tests. So how's Verizon? Verizon's going to be okay. We're way over here. Sometimes this is in the red, so we try to avoid those parks, especially if you are working. And sometimes there aren't speed tests if there's not a lot of reviews. Features and amenities again here. And then this gives you a little bit more information. Now here's a little tip here. When you're reading these reviews, you can look for your campsite and see what it's about. So here's campsite 25. Sometimes your campsite will be there. Somebody's reviewed it, sometimes not. There's campsite C16. Here is campsite L83. So you can scroll through here and try to find your campsite. So for example, let's find one, J66. All right, maybe that's our campsite. But you can see here, showers are not in the campground. They are not. They are, you have to drive. They're not close at all. Not ideals for truck campers. So this person told about it, but sometimes they will say something about the site. Site not level, 3% tilt. Okay, that's J66. So if that's the one I'm thinking about, I might move on. That might not be what I want. M94. So there's just a lot of information here. Here is a speed test right there. And tips. They will offer tips for other campers. I mean, it's just a lot of information. And that's how we find good sites, because I read these things, but it does take time. It takes a lot of time. Okay, so let's get back to RV Trip Wizard. I just want you to know that that is a very helpful resource there. Tips and question and answers here. People have asked questions. I have a 33-foot Airstream trailer. Are there any sites big enough? Best answer, we were in a 37 Class A mobile home. Plenty of space behind us. Shouldn't be a problem at all. So you can ask a question, or you can read the questions and answers, and here's tips. Walk the Rim, very beautiful. Free shuttle runs every 15 minutes until 9:30. Oftentimes we will find places to eat in town, or take this tour like I just saw, take the pink Jeep tour. So a lot of information here, and you can click on the weather. Okay, sometimes if you're not in a good service area, that the weather doesn't come up as easy, but I know we're going to be there in March. So what kind of weather can I expect? High of 53 and a low of 25. Okay. That's how the tabs work when you click on them. Let's click off of that. And let me scroll out a little bit and show you the radius. It should come up. Okay, so here you see the radius. So I know that if I'm traveling, you know, we're looking, okay, we're leaving the Grand Canyon. I'm going to turn my campgrounds to see my campgrounds. Here's a campground we could stay at if we didn't want to go all the way to here. But you know, there's a campground right here I could stay at. Here's a state park right here, about 150 miles away. Gooseneck State Park, Mexican Hat. Ah, there you go. Water only. Big rig's okay. So, because I had these filters on, so I can look at these other campgrounds and see what they're all about. There's Monument Valley, and it's within my 150-mile range. Okay, you're also probably wondering about what these are. No route available with without an unpaved road. I set that I don't want to be routed onto unpaved roads, but these come up a lot because campground entrances sometimes have unpaved roads of their own. So that's why we see these. We always double check. I also double check with the Trucker's Atlas to make sure we're safe for the route we have, and then we also cross-check with Google and make sure Google's not sending us somewhere crazy. All right, so that is a look at a trip that's been here. You can see we left. If you want to see where we went next, we would come and pull it. We kind of did a thing where we, you know, went up and saw this. We stayed at this place like 3 times. Navajo Land Hotel of Tuba City. A nice little park, reasonably priced, and convenient for our travels in the area. So it was a great overnight stay. So continuing our tour of the screen. So the research tab, I already showed you. Down here, I don't use these, and I'm not even going to try right now while my service is not well. This is you can switch back and forth between maps. There's a beta map you can try out. Here is your mileage, so you can see that distance right there is 20 miles, and that will change as you scroll in and out. So if you're looking, well, how far is that off the road? It's going to be like over here. Well, it's about 20 miles off of my route. So it's going to be 40 miles round trip if we decide to do this campground. So that's how that's helpful. Now, here's another thing that if you're traveling in areas that have mountains, just click on its elevation and see what it's looking like. You can click right here and show gradient. And these are the different grades. But it kind of gives you a heads up of what you're going into. And these numbers right here, this 15, 16, 17, this is stop number 15. So whatever stop number 15 is over here on our trip, I know that we're going to land at about, 2,493 feet. Grades are not going to be terrible. Over here, stop number 23, well, we're going to have some pretty significant grades to deal with coming back down. So just know that that's there and that you can check it out. This is important if you have a sleep number bed, because if you have a sleep number bed and you're going up in elevation, if we're going up, I forget, there is I'm not even going to say how many feet, but if we're going up in elevation, I just go ahead and deflate it so that we don't run the risk of damaging the mattress. But we did use this, so like, okay, we're here at 4,528 feet, and we're going to 7,000 feet, so we need to deflate. All right, so that's elevation, and that is a look at a trip that has been archived. It's a trip we actually did. So we're going to move into part 2 now as we click off this trip, and we're going to open a tentative trip. And this is 2024. Okay, so right now I have all my campsites visible. I'm going to just click them off so they're not cluttering up my area. So what I do is I start with our starting point, and then using my radius, I look and see. There you can see one's click there. That's Knoxville, Tennessee, an area we'll be going. But you can see I've got my radius there. And this is just a trip I was playing with. So we'll go up 114 miles and catch Swanee River State Park. So I always start a trip by plugging in where we're going. So we know we knew we were going here to Fayetteville, North Carolina. We knew we were going to Knoxville, Tennessee. So I just went ahead and plugged those waypoints in, and it had me going there. No problem, right? And then I just went back in, and with each one, so say I started here at Swanee, because we already know it's 114. Swanee River State Park, where is it at? Right there. I'm going to zoom out. So my trip is taking me to Fayetteville, North Carolina. So I'm looking to see what's on the way. Now, sometimes it is worth it to go off your trail a little bit, and Swanee River State Park is one that's worth it. So, you know, we kind of went looking at my scale down here, about 20 miles to get off of it and then back. So it takes us a little way. It really doesn't matter. I mean, I'm familiar with the area. If you go straight up right here, straight up this way or this way, it's really relatively the same. But I can see here that Fort Clinch State Park is going to be within my radius coming from Swanee River State Park. So not out of the ordinary. So there you go. And then I would do the same thing. I would click on Fort Clinch to see where to pick. Now here I've already picked, so you can see kind of like the outline of a trip. And I play with different scenarios because we have certain people we want to see, and we certainly don't want to be caught up north in snow. So we make sure we're south, somewhere south, before it gets to that point. But then we knew we were going to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, so we plugged that in. And then we wanted to hit these areas. We wanted to come over here towards Denver. And so that's kind of our route. Now, this is just a little tip. When I'm doing this, you see these days these are plugged in. And I locked in Fayetteville because I didn't want my dates to change. I wanted to be there on this date. So that's why the locks work. But so for example, Knoxville, I put 35 days there. Well, it's not going to take 35 days, but what I do is I plan on, let me give you an example. So I check the total miles it'll take me to get there, 378 miles, and I divide that by 100 because that is about when I want to, that's about how far we travel, 100 miles. So that's a good average. 100 miles a pop, how many stops? And 300 and something. So it's about 4 stops. Multiply that by 5 days, and that will give us how many nights. And I add those dates on. So that's where the 35 comes on. So for this one, it was probably 4 times 5 is 20 days. And I wanted to be there about 14, so I gave an extra day, 35 days. And that way, as I'm going through here, 70 days. Well, I'm not staying in Denver for 70 days, but I did the math here, and I figure it'll take me 70 days plus the time I want to stay there as a ballpark to make sure we're not caught somewhere in the cold or we're where we want to be in time. And then I just picked probably random, you know, we like Army Corps parks, so you can see the different dates that we picked as we went along. Just to give me a ballpark to see, are we going to be back south enough? Well, it's into September. We're in Knoxville. We're good. So we would not want to be in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at the end of September. Just saying. So this is a skeleton trip as an example. I'm going to stop with just showing the two trips, a tentative trip and our archive trip. I'm going to do another video to create trip. So watch for another video on creating a trip, and I'll show you step by step how to do that. But this kind of gives you a little overview. I know it was really long, but I really want to show you what all this program is capable of, so I didn't want to rush it. So we will be creating a trip next. Stay tuned. Again, if you're interested, you could just go ahead and go to the trial period, the 7-day trial period, and check that out. Don't forget, if you do decide to buy, 25% off if you use the code RUFF, RUFFROAD, Rough Road. Use the code Rough Road. So this is Sharon, Rough Road RV Life. We like looking at freedom. We hope to see you on the road. And hey, by the way, if you have used TripWizard, leave a comment down below. Or if you're thinking about using it, or if you use something else, what do you use? Do you like it? Let us know in the comments. My dogs are starting to move around. All right, happy travels, everyone.